My girlfriend told me she was pregnant, but the dates didn't match. She refused the paternity test and stalked me for 15 years. But when I discovered she did the same to 5 other men, the revenge was epic. I'm 34 years old. I work in construction as an independent contractor, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what I lived through for over 15 years was a complete nightmare that almost drove me crazy. And when I say nightmare, I'm not exaggerating. Like, imagine living all that time, being accused of something you didn't do, being constantly harassed, and not being able to do anything about it because the system basically tells you they can't help you until things get really bad. But anyway, I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met Sarah, I was like 18 or 19 years old when we started dating. She was about the same age, more or less. And at first, everything seemed normal, a typical young people relationship. We lasted together about 6 months, nothing special. We'd go out on weekends, go to the movies, stuff like that. I was just starting out in construction back then, doing contract jobs, and sometimes I had to go out of town for entire weeks, depending on the project. And that's right where this whole mess started. I remember perfectly that I left for a job that was going to last between 5 and 6 weeks. It was a big project in another state, good pay, and Sarah knew I was going to leave. I mean, it wasn't a surprise or anything. I told her in advance and everything. We kept in touch while I was away, but not as much as before, obviously, because I was working like 12 hours a day and would get to the hotel dead tired. When I came back, like a week after returning, Sarah tells me she needs to talk to me about something important, and that's when she dropped the bomb. She was pregnant. My first reaction was total panic, obviously, because I was 19 years old and wasn't even remotely ready to be a father. But then I started doing the math in my head, trying to remember when was the last time we'd been together before I left, and the math just didn't add up. She told me she was between 4 and 7 weeks pregnant, but I had been away for almost 6 full weeks, and before I left, we'd already had like 2 or 3 weeks where we barely saw each other because I was busy preparing everything for the trip. I told her something didn't add up, that the timing didn't match, and her reaction was to get super defensive immediately. I asked her that we get a paternity test. It seemed like the most logical thing, right? If it really was my child, there was no problem doing it, and if it wasn't, well, then we'd know the truth. But Sarah flatly refused. She told me, how could I doubt her? How dare I accuse her of cheating on me, that I was an asshole for even suggesting the baby wasn't mine? But the thing is that the more she insisted on not doing the test, the more certain I was that something wasn't right. We had horrible fights for like 2 weeks, me insisting on the test and her refusing again and again, until finally I told her I couldn't continue with this, that if she wasn't going to take the test, then it wasn't going to be there. I broke up with her, and I thought that was going to be the end of everything. God, was I wrong. Sarah didn't accept that we broke up. Literally. She acted like I had never told her it was over. She called me every day. Showed up at my house, at my work, everywhere. And the worst part is that she started telling everyone that I had gotten her pregnant and abandoned her, that I was an irresponsible father who had run away from my obligations. My friends started asking me what was up. My family was confused, and I tried to explain that the dates didn't match, that she refused to take a paternity test. But you know how people are. Many automatically assume the man is the bad guy in the story. Sarah had the baby. Her name was Lily, and that's when things got really crazy. She started showing up at places where I was with the child, like at the supermarket, at the gas station, outside my apartment, everywhere. And she always made the same scene. She'd yell things at me, like why didn't I want to meet my daughter? How could I be so heartless? That Lily deserved to have a father. The first time it happened, I was at a Home Depot, buying materials for a job, and suddenly I hear my name screamed at the top of someone's lungs. I turn around and there's Sarah with a baby in her arms, basically yelling at me in front of everyone that I'm a shitty father. It was humiliating. Like all the people in the store were watching us, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to ignore her. I tried to talk to her civilly. I tried everything I could think of, but nothing worked. And what really frustrated me was that every time someone asked me why I didn't just take the paternity test and be done with it, I had to explain that I couldn't force her to do it if she didn't want to, that I needed her consent or a judge's order. And getting that order without being sued first was basically impossible. And she never sued me for child support or anything, which should have. I've been a huge red flag, but I was so stressed all the time that I didn't think it through. After like the third or fourth incident like that, I decided I needed legal protection, so I went to court and got a restraining order. The judge gave it to me without much problem, because there were witnesses to the times Sarah had harassed me in public, and I thought I was finally going to have some peace. But restraining orders here where I live only last 2 years, and then you have to renew them. So, basically every 2 years I had to go back to court, explain everything again, show evidence that Sarah was still a threat, and pray they'd renew the order. And so years went by. Literally, like 6 or 7 years of this cycle of renewing the restraining order every 2 years. Sarah kept showing up occasionally, always with Lily, although now the girl was bigger and I could see in her little face that she was confused about why her mom was yelling at me in public. Sometimes Lily would look at me with this super sad expression, and I felt horrible for her because obviously it wasn't her fault to be in the middle of this whole mess. But what could I do? You know, I couldn't go talk to her because that would violate the restraining order I had against her mother. And besides, I didn't know if she was really my daughter or not, so it was an impossible situation. Things continued like this until one day, I think Lily was like 10 or 11 years old by then. My friend Mason called me and told me he needed to talk to me urgently. We met at a cafe and he told me something that left me frozen. Turns out Mason had been talking to a guy named Justin at the gym, and somehow the topic of toxic relationships or something came up, and Justin mentioned he'd had a crazy ex who had told him her daughter was his, but refused to take a paternity test. Mason, being curious, asked him more details, and when Justin described the woman and mentioned the girl was named Lily, Mason almost fell off his chair. It was Sarah, the same Sarah. She had done exactly the same thing to Justin that she did to me. I couldn't believe it. My brain wasn't processing the information. I asked Mason to put me in contact with Justin as quickly as possible, and when the three of us met and compared our stories, it was like watching two identical movies. Justin had dated Sarah around the same time as me. Maybe a little before or a little after, we weren't sure of the exact dates. She had told him the same thing, that she was 4 to 7 weeks pregnant, the dates didn't match when they had been together, she refused the paternity test, started harassing him with the girl after she was born, everything the same. And he had also gotten restraining orders that he had to renew every 2 years. But wait, because it gets better or worse, depending on how you look at it. Turns out Justin knew another guy, Sean, who had also had problems with an ex who sounded suspiciously like Sarah. We contacted Sean, and yes, it was her. Exactly the same story again. And then we found 2 more guys. I don't remember their names now, but basically, Sarah had been doing this with like 5 or 6 different men for over 10 years. She used us to get money when she could, harassed us in public to make us look bad, showed up at our jobs, everything you can think of. What I still don't understand is how she managed to maintain all this without us finding each other before. I guess we were from different areas of the city, had different social circles, and she was smart enough not to show up with all of us at the same time. But eventually her luck ran out, because once we all found each other, we decided we were going to do something about it once and for all. Between all of us, we hired a lawyer, gathered all the evidence we had, the restraining orders, witness testimonies, videos and photos of the times Sarah had harassed us, and filed a case together. Basically, we argued that Sarah was using Lily to manipulate and harass multiple men, that she was refusing paternity tests to keep her scheme working, and that we needed a judge to order the tests to put an end to all this once and for all. The case took like 6 months to get to court. It was 6 months of horrible stress where we didn't know if the judge was going to take us seriously or if we were going to end up worse than before. But when the day of the hearing finally came, and Sarah had to stand in front of the judge and explain why she had been telling 5 different men they were her daughter's father while refusing to do paternity tests, she had no coherent explanation. The judge was visibly upset, like I had never seen a judge so angry in a courtroom, and he asked Sarah directly if there was any legitimate reason why she didn't want to take the tests. She started with excuses that the tests were invasive, that they scared her, that she didn't trust the labs. Pure nonsense. The judge ordered the paternity tests right there, said Sarah. Had 2 weeks to take Lily to get tested with each of us or face serious legal consequences. And finally, after more than 15 years, we took the damn tests. We all had to go separately to a certified lab. They took DNA samples from all of us and from Lily, and then it was a matter of waiting for the results. Those 3 weeks of waiting were eternal. I'm not going to lie. Part of me was terrified that the test would come back positive, because that would mean I had been wrong all this time and that I had abandoned my daughter for 15 years. But the other part of me, the part that knew the facts, knew it was impossible for me to be the father because of the dates. When the results came in and we read them in court, I was not the father. Justin was not the father. Sean was not the father. None of the other guys were the father. Sarah had been lying to everyone for 15 years. Sarah's reaction in court was something I'll never forget. She started screaming that the results were wrong, that the lab had made a mistake, that this was a conspiracy against her. The judge tried to calm her down, but she kept screaming, saying that all of us had manipulated the tests somehow, that we were liars. She was having a complete breakdown in front of everyone, and honestly, it was kind of pitiful to see her like that, but I also felt enormous rage because this woman had ruined 15 years of my life with her lies. Lily was there too. She was like 14 or 15 years old by that point, and seeing her witness her mother's breakdown was devastating. The girl was crying, obviously confused about what was happening, and I wanted to go comfort her, but I didn't know if I should or could. The judge ended up extending all our restraining orders permanently, or well, as permanent as they can be, and warned Sarah that if she approached any of us again, she was going to face serious criminal charges. Sarah didn't learn her lesson. Like 2 weeks after the trial, she showed up at my work again, screaming the same things as always. But this time I called the police immediately, and they came and arrested her for violating the restraining order. She spent like 3 days in jail before someone paid her bail. I don't know who it was, probably her family. What happened next was that Lily's great-grandmother, Martha was her name, contacted me. She was Sarah's grandmother or something like that. I'm not sure of the exact relationship, but basically she was the only person in Sarah's family who seemed to have any common sense. Martha apologized to me on behalf of the whole family, told me they had no idea Sarah had been doing this with so many men, and that they were going to take care of Lily because Sarah obviously wasn't in any condition to care for her properly. Martha took full custody of Lily, moved the girl in with her, and cut off all the financial support they had been giving Sarah. And that's when Sarah finally realized her entire scheme had collapsed. Without the men to harass and without her family's support, she was basically left alone with the consequences of her actions. I thought that was going to be the end of everything, that I could finally move on with my life in peace. And for a while it was. Like 6 months went by without hearing anything from Sarah or Lily or anyone from that situation. But then one day, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten on pink paper with little stars. It was from Lily. The letter basically said that she knew I wasn't her father, that she had been at the hearing when the results were read, but that she wanted to apologize for all the times her mom had harassed and bothered me. She said she was very confused about her life, that she didn't understand why her mom had lied for so long, and that she was trying to process everything with the help of a therapist. She ended the letter saying she hoped I could forgive her someday, even though she hadn't really done anything wrong, but I guess she felt responsible for her mother's actions. I cried when I read that letter. I'm not going to lie. I cried because that poor girl had been used as a pawn in her mother's mind games her entire life, and now she had to deal with the fact that everything she thought she knew about her origins was a lie. I wrote a letter back to her, told her she had nothing to be forgiven for because she was a victim in all this as much as I was, and that I hoped she could have a good life with her great-grandmother Martha. And that's where the story gets even crazier, if you can believe it. Like a year later, Lily contacted me again. She was like 16 or 17 years old by then, and asked me if I could help her find her real father. She told me she had been thinking a lot about this, that she felt like a part of her was lost without knowing where she came from, and that her mom kept refusing to say who her biological father was. Sarah basically kept insisting that one of us was the father and that the tests were wrong, which was completely ridiculous considering we had used multiple labs and all the results had been the same. Honestly, I didn't know if I should get involved or not. You know, technically it wasn't my problem, and I had already lost enough time of my life on this mess. But something in me felt I should help her. This girl hadn't done anything wrong and deserved to know the truth about who her father was. So I told her yes, that I would do what I could to help her. We started investigating, trying to reconstruct the timeline of when Sarah got pregnant. Lily found an old photo of her mom with a group of people at a party, and there was a guy there that Lily had never seen before. She asked Martha about the photo, and Martha told her the guy's name was David, that he had dated Sarah briefly, like right around the time she would have gotten pregnant with Lily. Martha didn't have much more information about him, just that it had been something casual and that she never saw him again after Sarah announced her pregnancy. With that name and that basic information, we started investigating. It was like being a detective, like searching on social media, asking people who knew Sarah at that time, trying to find any clue about this David guy. It took us like 3 months, but we eventually found him. He lived in a different state, was married with kids, had a completely normal life, and had no idea he potentially had a 17-year-old daughter. Contacting him was super awkward, I'm not going to lie. How do you explain to someone that 17 years ago he had something with a woman, and now that woman has a daughter who could be his? But she's been telling like 6 different guys they're the father. It sounded like total madness. But to everyone's surprise, David agreed to take the DNA test. He said that if there was a possibility he had a daughter, he wanted to know for sure. We did the test, waited for the results, and when they came in, they confirmed that David was Lily's biological father, with 99.9% certainty. Finally, after 17 years, the truth had come to light. David was in shock, obviously, like he had just discovered he had a teenage daughter he never knew about, but he took the news better than expected. His wife was less happy with the situation, which is completely understandable, but they eventually agreed to meet Lily and see how they could build some kind of relationship. The last time I heard from them, David and Lily were getting to know each other little by little. They had video calls regularly, and he had gone to visit her a couple of times. Lily seemed to be happy to finally have answers and to be able to meet her real father. As for Sarah, she's still living in her world of denial. According to Martha, she still insists the tests are wrong and that one of us is Lily's father, but nobody pays attention to her anymore. As for me, I can finally live peacefully, without having to look over my shoulder. Every time I go to the supermarket or the gas station, without having to renew restraining orders every 2 years. Without having to explain to new people in my life why a random woman yells at me in public. It's a strange feeling after all this time, like weird but good, if that makes sense. Sometimes I still think about this whole situation and I can't believe it actually happened, that a person can maintain such an elaborate lie for so long and ruin so many lives in the process. But I guess there are people like that in the world. People who are willing to do whatever it takes to get attention or money or whatever Sarah was looking for.